Hey guys, Mike here. When it comes to winter camping, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the biggest fear for people who have never done it is freezing their butt off overnight. Like it's some intentional, hardcore part of the experience. Short answer? No. When it comes to winter camping, even pros like Jim Baird and Joe Robinet want to stay warm and cozy overnight. Not only for comfort, but for safety reasons too. So the question is, how? How do you stay nice and warm throughout the night while camping out in temperatures well below freezing? In today's video, 10 simple but effective ways to stay warm overnight while winter camping in cold weather. Number 10, a properly rated sleeping bag. In the summer, you have so much more leeway with what you sleep in overnight, and heck, half the time you can get away without using a sleeping bag at all. Not the case for winter camping, unfortunately. In cold weather, you need to make sure you have the proper equipment, and a properly rated sleeping bag is a good chunk of that. You may or may not know that most sleeping bags have a temperature rating, but if you've only camped in warm weather before, this has probably never really been something you've worried about. These ratings, if it wasn't obvious, is how cold the sleeping bags can be used in. However, there is something important to keep in mind. The temperature rating can either be a comfort rating or a survivability rating. The difference there is important. The comfort rating is what temperature you'll be able to comfortably sleep in the bag overnight in, whereas the survivability rating is how cold you'll be able to shiver and barely survive the night in. And as a rule of thumb, if the sleeping bag doesn't tell you that the temperature is a comfort rating, just automatically assume it's the survivability rating. Generally, you want to aim for something with a survivability rating of at least 10 degrees colder than what you tend to use it for. I personally go for 15 if it doesn't list a comfort rating. You want your sleeping bag to be zipped up so that it forms a soft seal against your body, as otherwise heat quickly escapes through the open gaps. And as an extra tip, you can add fleece liners or wool blankets, stuff like that, to add extra warmth to it. Number 9, use a sleeping pad or an underquilt. Your first few times camping, if you camped right on the ground, you'll probably have noticed this, that even in the hottest of summers, the ground gets really cold at night. Even if you have a properly rated sleeping bag, your weight compacts it underneath you, making it lose its insulating properties, and so you'll still have heat sapped from you extremely quickly in winter from underneath you if you don't have some sort of sleeping pad or other insulation to separate you from the ground. Some sort of winter rated sleeping pad is my usual go-to. They're usually rated with something called an R value, which is basically their resistance to temperature change. Higher is better. For winter use, look for something with at least a 3.5 R value, preferably something with 4 or above. I get by with a Climate Static V insulated. I'll leave an affiliate link in the description if you're interested. If you're in a hammock instead of on the ground, you still have heat loss from convection underneath. Sleeping pads still work, but you can also get something called an underquilt, which slings underneath your hammock to keep you insulated. If you're particularly adventurous and forego the sleeping pad, you can use natural materials to create your own insulation. Stuff like dried grass, garbage bags full of leaves or needles, spruce boughs, anything that can loft up and trap air underneath you and keep you off the ground is extremely good. Number 8, stay dry. In the winter, dampness is your enemy. Sweating, leaky boots, rain, snowfall melting on you, and powdery snow just finding its way into all of your stuff are just some of the ways you can find yourself dealing with dampness or an outright soaking in cold weather. And the reason is simple: water is a heck of a cooling agent. During the day, it's important to layer up and down as needed so that you don't sweat, and take every precaution to not get wet socks or clothes, and have a change of clothes, and if you're an idiot like me who somehow very frequently gets his boots soaked, an extra set of liners, so that you always have something dry to change into. If you don't have something dry to change into, make it a priority to dry out your stuff carefully with a campfire. During the day, while you're active and generating body heat, you have more leeway, but at night, when you wind down for the night, dampness can be lethal. You want to make sure you're in a dry set of clothes when you get into your dry sleeping bag, and if you bring anything into your sleeping bag to keep it warm, make sure it's tied up in a sealed bag if it's wet or damp. And most importantly, fight the temptation to cover your face in your sleeping bag. You breathe out quite a lot of moisture, and that will build up in your sleeping bag and cause a lot of heat loss through condensation. There's a reason why even the minus 40 Celsius sleeping bags cover everything except for a very small hole near your face. Number 7, Eat right before you go to bed. Your metabolism is a powerful furnace if it's got fuel to burn. Any sort of food will help, but preferably something that's warm and hearty. Eat right before you go to bed and your body's metabolism will go to work, generating body heat as you digest your food, keeping you that much warmer and heating up the inside of your sleeping bag a lot faster. Number 6, exercise right before you go to bed. Similar to food for your metabolism, getting some exercise in, making sure not to sweat of course, kickstarts your body into generating a lot of body heat. It might take you longer to get to sleep since, you just kicked your sleepiness in the face with physical activity, but it will help heat the inside of your sleeping bag that much faster. And if you're like me, that exercise might be as simple as just fighting your way into your sleeping bag and squirming into the right position. Number 5, reduce or eliminate wind. Next to dampness, wind is the next killer when it comes to heat loss. Even in a sleeping bag, it will wick away heat from the outside and chill you to the bone. Ideally, your campsite will be well out of the way of the wind, but failing that, your shelter should at least be set up so that wind isn't able to get to you inside of your shelter. It's important that your shelter has some sort of breathability, so you don't want to be sealed up tight, but definitely make sure that wind isn't blowing right into your shelter. This is easier with tents, which usually come with some sort of fly that covers the entirety of your tent, but wind may still manage to blow up from underneath the fly and through your tent. Use snow or sticks or spruce boughs to blockade that side of your tent if you find this happening. It's definitely harder to do if you have a tarp shelter. You'll want your tarp wall to come all the way down and meet the ground against the direction of the wind, unless you're in a hammock well out of the airflow beneath you. Number 4, a smaller shelter with reflective properties. Although your primary insulation is your sleeping bag, the shelter itself can also lend to keeping you warm. You do lose a bit of heat throughout the night, and having a smaller tent or tarp with heat-reflecting walls can actually help a bit with keeping you warm. Those foil-like space blankets are excellent for this. Consider lining your walls with them, or if you're particularly adventurous with your shelter, use it as the shelter itself. Number 3, boiled water or hot rocks. If you find yourself with an underrated sleeping system setup, or you just want that extra bit of coziness overnight, a common, widely used trick is to either put some boiled water in a water bottle or wrap a hot rock, one that's cooled down from skin melting temperatures of course, and keep it in the sleeping bag with you. You'll be amazed at how much heat these things retain and how well they do at keeping you warm and cozy overnight. Just one stainless steel water bottle I wrapped in a sock was still warm to the touch the next morning, the very first time I went out winter camping. Link to that video at the top of the screen. If you're sleeping on a cot, or were feeling particularly bushcrafty and built yourself a log bed, you can pile a bunch of hot rocks fresh out of the campfire underneath, and they'll heat you from underneath well into the next morning. Number 2, build a heat reflector and sleep next to the fire. When winter camping, common practice is to gather as much firewood as you'll think you'll need, and then when you think you have enough, quintuple it. You'll be amazed at how much firewood you burn through in the colder months compared to the summer. If you have enough firewood to keep it going throughout the night, you can build a fire reflector on the opposite side of the campfire as you, out of rocks or wood or something, or reflective metal if you have it, to focus the heat back in your direction from the opposite side. This way you can sleep right next to the campfire if your sleep system is inadequate, or even as your primary means of staying warm overnight. If you put a reflector behind you, a space blanket works wonders here, it'll make it even more efficient for keeping you warm. It's gonna suck because you'll probably have to get up a couple times over the night to feed more wood into the fire, but it's much better than a sleepless, frigid night. And number 1, use powdery snow as insulation. This is the most ironic way to add warmth to a shelter that I think surprises most winter camping newcomers. There's a reason that quinzees and igloos are effective. Although snow itself is cold to the touch, powdery snow is actually quite an excellent insulator. Have you ever noticed that you feel less cold when there's fresh snowfall, even while it's actively snowing? Check it out the next time you're out in fresh snow, see if you notice. And the reason you want fresh powdery snow is because the insulating value, of course, comes from the air trapped in the snow. And if you do use snow this way, don't pack it down, leave it as loose as you possibly can. Dogpile it if you need to, but avoid packing it down for structural reasons. If you built a shelter or have a tough tent that can support the weight, pile loose snow around it to add insulation to it to keep you warmer overnight. Or if the snow is deep enough, dig down to the ground and use the snow itself around you as the walls of your shelter. You'll be amazed at how warm your little hidey hole actually is. Bam! 10 ways to stay warm overnight while winter camping. If you stay out of the wind, a properly rated sleeping bag and sleeping pad is all you really need a majority of the time, but if you find that temperatures are worse than anticipated, or your gear is just a little bit under spec, or heck, maybe you just want the extra bit of comfort, these tips can help you have an amazing winter camping experience. Winter camping doesn't have to be scary, and I hope this list is valuable to those interested in trying it out for the first time. My goal is to show you that it doesn't have to be hardcore or complex, it's just normal camping with a few extra considerations. I'll leave some Amazon affiliate links in the description for winter camping gear that I personally use and can wholly recommend. Check it out if this will be helpful to you. If you're new to the channel, I take a look at how fun, futuristic technology can intersect with traditional outdoors experiences, so check out my other videos and consider subscribing if that's your thing. Thanks for watching, guys. I love you all, and I'll catch you next video.